Okay, year 6. So, another 3 chapters today. Again, 2 of them really short. So, we'll get going. So, chapter 34, Smoke. Remember the last thing we heard? Salim, still missing. However, Ted thinks he's worked it out. Thinks he knows how he went missing. So, he was on the phone to Detective Inspector Pierce. So, let's find out what happened. Time passed. Cat and Mum came downstairs arm in arm. I hadn't seen them like that in a while. I was able to deduce from their body language that they'd made up, and this made me pleased because it showed how much better I was at getting at reading body language. Then Aunt Gloria came down in her dressing gown. Her lips were flat and her eyes empty looking, so I didn't know what her body language was saying, and I was less pleased. Dad and Rashid went out to fetch an Indian takeaway for everyone. They returned with a dozen foil containers of steaming food. I had 2 samosas, a chicken biryani, and most of Kat's chicken korma, which she couldn't finish. Dad got most of the way through a prawn boona. As for the others, mounds of food got left on their plates. Aunt Gloria nibbled on one side of an onion bhaji for about half an hour. Mum's fork went round her plate, pushing the same chickpea. Rashid sipped a beer and stared at his food without even starting. How was work? Mum said to Dad. He shrugged. Quiet. I was out Peckham way today, on another job. Then nobody spoke. I wanted to tell them what I knew, and all about my conversation with Detective Inspector Pierce, but she had told me to say nothing for now in case people started to hope. She explained that normally hope is a good thing, but if you hope a lot for something and it doesn't happen, then you're disappointed, and it's called being let down. I asked her if being let down was like coming back to earth with a bump if you let out the air out of a hot air balloon too fast, and she said yes, it was like that. Then that started another train of thought, that hot air ballooning was something I'd try one day, but only when the weather was set fair, and I'd bring instruments for measuring air pressure and temperature and make recordings, and Houston calling planet Pluto, Dad said. I looked over at Dad. This is what it says to get my attention when my thoughts are far away from where my body is. Pass the rice, Ted, he said, smiling. I passed the rice. There was silence again. It was as if everybody had decided that Salim was not to be mentioned. Cat kept winding a brown curl of hair around her finger. Aunt Gloria lit a cigarette but forgot to smoke it. I watched it burn away and followed the trail of smoke through the air as it burned. It was deflected to the left over her shoulder, although there was no window open and no air in the room. This made me think of the Coriolis effect again and how it is invisible but can make things change direction. Aunt Gloria, I said. Shh, Mum said. No, let him say what he wanted to say, said Aunt Gloria. Why are you lighting cigarettes and not smoking them? I asked. Ted, said Mum, give your Aunt Glo a break. Gloria gave a tiny smile. I didn't even notice that I'd lit one, Ted. I tell you what, when this is over, if he comes back, I'll give the damn things up. That's a promise. She sat back, tears going down her face, and took a long drag. I wasn't sure if she was crying at the thought of having to give up cigarettes, or because Salim might not come back safely. The room went quiet again. If he comes back safe, she repeated, which was how I knew she was crying because of Salim, not the cigarettes. I carried on eating. When I put my knife and fork down, I listened to the silence. I heard the clock ticking again. Then I felt blood pounding in my ears. It was like railway wheels going round in my head, trains of thought running out of control, couplers snapping. The boy on the slab, the boy on the train. Mum made a pot of tea. I heard a spoon rapping against china as Dad stirred in his sugar. Salim or not Salim? I can't stand it anymore, Aunt Gloria said. She leaped up. The waiting, I can't stand it. Mum reached out and put a hand on Aunt Gloria's wrist. I know, Glo. Sit down. You don't know. You can't know. Cat and Ted, they've never disappeared. Not like this. Not for more than 2 days. And nothing. No news, nothing. Calm down, Gloria, said Rashid. How can I? You're all sitting there. You're all looking at me, and I know what you're thinking. Glo, Mum said. Don't you start. I overheard you on the phone to Ben. You think Salim's run away, don't you? You think he's hiding from me, don't you? Why don't you just say it? Glo, Mum said. Go on, say it. Maybe if the choice is between Salim being kidnapped by some evil person or he's hiding somewhere unaware of how much distress he's causing you, then yes, I do think that is... You're saying it's my fault, that I've brought this on myself. No, Glo, not that. But maybe going to New York. For Salim, that was the step to... It wasn't, Aunt Gloria cried out. I know my own boy. He wouldn't do this to me, I know. She turned from the table. The sleeve of her dressing gown caught her plate and an onion bhaji went flying. Her shoulders shook. I'm going to go out there and find him. I am. I don't care if I have to walk from one end of London to the other. She staggered through the door into the hallway. Mum jumped up. Glow, don't go. I didn't mean... From where I was sitting, I could see Aunt Gloria opening the front door, fiddling with the handle. Get lost, Faye, she shouted. Stop her, Ben, Mum said. She's out of her mind. Dad looked dazed, got up to his feet. Kat got up too. Rashid sat still, his mouth hanging open. Just as Aunt Gloria opened the front door, a siren came wailing up right outside. Lights flashed. There were voices in the front garden. People moving, confusion. A chair fell over and Rashid rocked on his chair and started groaning. Please, God, please, no, he said. A bad feeling went up my esophagus. The police had come, just when Detective Inspector Pierce had told me they would. But I hadn't expected the siren. And it didn't sound like the sirens did when I played Ambulances with Kat. It sounded real, and near, and loud, and bad. The boy on the train, the boy on the slab. Salim or not Salim? I put my hands over my ears. The general synopsis at 1900. Low Fitzroy, 1008, expected just west of Rockwell. Okay, chapter 35, The Boy on the Train, again. Detective Inspector Pierce entered the house, leading Aunt Gloria by the elbow. She guided her into the kitchen and sat her down. She looked like she needs a warm drink, the inspector said. She's in a state of shock. Kat poured a cup of tea. Rashid got up to give his place to Aunt Gloria. He sat her down and stroked her hair. Her hands shook and lips chattered together as if she'd just come in from a snowstorm, although it was warm and humid outside, about 18 degrees. It's the news, Mum said. Detective Inspector Pierce didn't reply until Aunt Gloria had taken a sip of her drink. I felt Kat's hand in mine, gripping hard. Inspector Pierce shook her head. Some news, but neither good nor bad. It's more of an update, courtesy of Ted. Everybody stared at me. Ted, said Mum. Ted, said Dad. Ted, said Kat. I didn't say anything. I looked at the kitchen floor. Ted has worked out what happened to Salim the day he disappeared, Detective Inspector Pierce continued. His conclusions agreed with where our inquiries were heading, but I have to say he got there before us. Ted, Kat said again. Her mouth was open and her jaw hung down. We followed up on what Ted told us, but as yet we still don't know where Salim is. Aunt Gloria moaned and put her head in her hands. But we know who the boy on the train was. Salim, said Mum. Detective Inspector Pierce's hands went apart. Not Salim, she said. This is the boy on the train. Here. Another woman police officer in uniform came into the room. With her was a boy, about Salim's age, but not Salim. He was half hiding behind the officer's tall body. He was chubby around the cheeks, dark-haired and Asian-looking, although it was hard to see him properly as he wore the hood of his sweatshirt over his head and part of his face. You! Aunt Gloria gasped. Hello, Marcus, I said. Chapter 36, the last one for today. Okay, weather detection. I suppose you want to know how I worked it out. Or maybe your brain works on a different operating system from other people's like mine, and you've worked it out too. I'd done nothing but think from 2 minutes past noon on the day Salim disappeared, Monday, to when I'd phoned the police at 18:04, Wednesday. That's 54 hours and 2 minutes of thinking. If you count sleeping time, which I do, you go on thinking in your sleep. I'd gone over the 9 theories again and again. We discounted theories 1, 2, 8 and 8 by checking them out. Salim couldn't have stayed on the pod for another ride, nor had my watch gone wrong, nor could he have hidden under somebody's clothes without our noticing. Kat had convinced me that theory 9, that Salim never got on the pod in the first place, was wrong. Theories 5 and 7, spontaneous combustion and the time warp, Kat had dismissed out of hand. I hadn't, but there was another reason I'd finally agreed to cross them off, one I hadn't told Kat. I counted the number of people who got on the pod, 21, and I counted the number of people who got off, 21. I realised that if Salim had spontaneously combusted or slipped into a time warp, only 20 people would have gotten off. That left theories 3, 4 and 6. 3 and 4 both depended on us having somehow missed Salim when he got out. I told the police there was about a 2% chance of our having missed him, which meant there was a 98% chance that Salim had emerged from the pod in disguise. At first, we'd thought this theory unlikely, but the more I considered it over the 54 hours and 2 minutes, the more possible it seemed. When we went up in the London Eye with Dad the next day, I'd noticed at a time when you could put a disguise on with nobody noticing. It's when everyone turns to have their souvenir shot taken. Everyone faces one way for almost a full minute until the flash goes off. So I'd given the souvenir shot of Salim's pod, but Kat brought another look. I kept coming back to the pink sleeve, the one that was the girl, that we thought was the girl in the pink fluffy jacket at the back of the picture, waving at the camera. I don't know when I first realised. Maybe it was 18 pictures that Kat took of our washing line when she was using Salim's film, with the sleeves of sweatshirts, jumpers and blouses waving in the wind. Or maybe it was the way I'd seen Kat struggle into her fur-collared jacket the morning she'd rushed to get photos of the strange man enlarged. The sleeve in the souvenir shot was not somebody waving. It was somebody changing. A pink sleeve, waving or drowning, waving or changing. It depended on how you looked at it. The girl in the pink fluffy jacket was Salim's accomplice. They'd swapped identities in the pod. A wig, a jacket, sunglasses. That was all it needed. And I remembered Aunt Gloria saying how Salim was a practical joker, not a theoretical joker like me, but a practical one, which means he actually carried out his jokes. Maybe this was a practical joke on a big scale. For a brief period, I wondered if Salim had a girlfriend who nobody had mentioned, maybe a girlfriend even Aunt Gloria didn't know about. A factor X in the equation, the Coriolis force, the thing that had deflected Salim off his course. Then, in the 54 hours and 2 minutes of thinking time, another possibility occurred to me. Marcus, the idiot, the mosher, the boy in the Tempest. Salim said a mate had called him from Manchester while we were crossing the Jubilee footbridge on the way to the Eye. Later, we'd heard the police that everyone questioned in Manchester, including Marcus, said they'd not heard from Salim since he had left. It was inconsistency. Someone was lying. Marcus, maybe. The police reported on Salim's friend alibis the day he disappeared. Marcus' mum had said he was on a day out with the scouts. So I thought, maybe Marcus was out with the scouts, the way Kat and I had gone swimming, or the way Kat was supposed to be at school that day when she'd really gone to town to have her hair flare consultation. I didn't know much about Marcus, only that he and Salim were friends, that they were both half Asian and at an all-boys school, that they were moshers, which means casual, cool dudes, and that they'd starred in The Tempest at school. Salim had played Ferdinand. Somebody must have played the only female role, Miranda, who Kat had told me was a dish rag. Maybe it was Marcus. Maybe that's how they'd had the idea. Marcus? Very likely. When the girl got off the motorbike at the scooter show, freestyle jumps, everyone had assumed she was a man, until she'd taken off her helmet and loosed her long hair. Maybe Kat and I had done the reverse, assumed the person in the pink fluffy jacket was a woman just because she had long hair. Male or female, it depended on how you looked at it. Marcus, almost certainly. One of the 21 people leaving the pod. There had been no extra woman, no female who could have emerged from under the wig and sunglasses disguise, but there had been a lad. The lad we'd taken for the girl in the pink fluffy jacket's boyfriend, the boy with chubby brownish cheeks. Marcus. Definitely. That's when I remembered Salim shaving off his moustache. If he was to become the girl in the pink fluffy jacket, he needed to be clean shaven, as did Marcus. Everything pointed to Marcus. Then the final jigsaw piece fell into place. What the woman security guard said as we left Earl's Court. I didn't slot it into the rest of the pattern until the 87th kick of the garden shed. Kat had asked her where the strange man called Christie had gone. She'd replied he'd gone home with a stomach bug, a bug she didn't believe in. With him it's always the same. Sick this, dentist that, dead uncle the other, never rains but it pours, just like his name. Detective Inspector Pierce had mentioned Marcus' surname to us only once, but once was enough. Enough for me, at least, because I am going to be a meteorologist when I grow up. The name Flood had struck an interest in me all along. The strange man had lied to us in Earl's Court and lied to us again at Mile End. Both times he'd known more than he said. He and Marcus were related. They were both called Flood. For some reason he had helped. Marcus and Slim carried out their practical joke, maybe because that's all he thought it was. But it wasn't just a practical joke, it was also part of a bigger plan. A plan for Salim to run away. Because I think everybody knew by then, Salim hadn't been abducted. He'd vanished by his own choice. He never wanted to go to New York. A clue to this had been in the guidebook in his backpack. There were no creases on the spine, which meant Salim had never opened it, which meant going to New York didn't make him excited. But the London Eye did. And vanishing while riding it was the best and most exciting way of running away he could think of. A weather detective is someone who uses observations and measurements to make theories, and if theories are right, they will correctly predict weather patterns. Finding out what had happened to Salim, where he was likely to be, was exactly like that. I had made observations and constructed theories, and then found out more facts with Kat's help. And when the facts and theories fitted, I thought we'd be able to track Salim down, just like you track a storm system and predict where it will make landfall. Only something had gone wrong. Salim hadn't appeared at the end of the trail. There was only Marcus. And Marcus stood in the kitchen, staring at the floor. And when everybody started talking at once to him, he started crying. His head was down, but you could hear him and see his shoulders moving. And I got a very bad feeling in my esophagus again. Okay, we'll leave it there today. What has Marcus got to tell us? What is he going to do?